hello and welcome. Today is our thrift flip video. So if you're a subscriber, then you know that a couple of times a month I come at you with some thrift flips, give you an idea of how to zhuzh up some old decor items that you may have lying around, or some that you find when you're out thrifting. Other weeks we are doing brand new projects, refinishing furniture, whatever happens to be on tap here in the shop. If you are new, I would love it if you would hit subscribe. Keep us coming at you, but let's jump into it. We've got 7 projects that we're going to be trying to get through today, and let me just kind of give you a bit of a heads up of what they are. We are going to be doing over a little clock. So it's got a little stand and a little clock. Nothing wrong with it as it is. But again, it's just a little bit dark. We're just going to brighten it up a little bit. Nothing major. We have a little baby shelf with some cool, cute little brackets here. So we're just going to brighten it up, take it away from the raw wood. We have a little bunny and a crate. So we're going to do them up kind of as a little bit of a duo, so we stage that way. Certainly he can just be hanging out. Get to do whatever you want with it. So we're going to be doing that, starting to do a little bit of Easter, and we actually have a couple of more bunnies that we're going to be doing. So we have these 2 guys that we're going to be doing up. I've got a big handled tote box that we're going to be painting out. Probably do a little bit of stenciling on that. I have this super cool little, it's set up to be hung on your wall. It's got a spot for a taper candle, but again, you can use that as a platform for a bigger candle, for a plant or a pot. And it's just kind of an interesting little wood piece. So we're going to be painting that out. And then I have this big, heavy Mama Jamma, which has definitely seen better days, painted in a bright silver metallic. We're actually going to be painting this in metallic too, but maybe highlighting the details a little bit differently. So let's jump in and get going with some of this stuff. So as always, I kind of like to take a look at pieces that we've got that are going to need the same treatment. Which means I've got some things that I want to do in dark and decrepit. This one, it's getting a treatment all on its own. Oh my Lord, this is sealed down. I should check these things before I bring you on so you're not seeing me struggle. Oy! There we go. All right, so for this one, I am going to be painting this in copper. It's called Pennies from Heaven. It's a DIY product, which makes sense because that's what I carry in my shop. It is a liquid patina, which means not only is it a paint, but it also self-seals. So I don't need to seal this again. I mean, we're not going to be done just with painting it out with the one coat, but we have a little more we're going to be doing to it, but I want to get this coat on. And I really think that with the copper patina paint, I'm likely only going to need to be doing the one coat. If there's a little bit more that needs doing, it's going to just be touch up in a couple of areas. So this is going to be a very quick little flip, but it's going to completely change the old, tired, worn look that it had going here, right? And with something like this, with the finish that we're doing, all that kind of chippiness that you see that isn't very attractive is going to work for us. We're going to use kind of some of the indents and some of the chips. And for this, all I'm using is a chip brush. So I'm not using, a really high-end brush at all to be able to get the results for something like this, because I want it to get down into the crevices and things like that. There's no need. You can if you want to. There's nothing wrong with it. But I don't tend to use my good brushes for things that don't need it or that are likely to hurt the bristles unnecessarily. So I can see that up on top, one coat is going to be enough. Down here, where it's a little bit slick and doesn't have that texture going for it, I'm gonna need 2 coats to be able to cover all of that silver. So I'm gonna paint this out the one time with you, and then I will put that second coat on before I bring you back. I'm getting this all over the place. So I'll paint it again before I come back at you with that one. So first coat done, like that. So I'll do a second coat on the bottom at least, maybe a little bit of touch up if I missed a couple of spots on the top. But that one is done and ready to go. Now, the next pieces that we're doing, sorry, I forgot to bring any plastic wrap around. So just while I'm talking, I'm keeping my paintbrush a little bit moist. Oh, I have a bit of tin foil hanging here from the last video, so I'll just wrap it up so that it's ready for me for the next one. The next thing that we're going to do is take some of the pieces that we need to darken up. And for this, again, I'm using another patina product from DIY, and this one is called Dark and Decrepit. And you've probably seen me use this. Look how lovely that opened because it's brand new. You've probably seen me use this on projects before. I love it when I've got things like raw wood where I'm gonna want to do a little bit of distressing and I wanna get a little bit of color on. And I prefer doing this than painting it black only because this is gonna stain that wood, which means that when I go to distress, I don't have to worry about distressing past it. I'm gonna get that nice dark look without having to seal it because it's going to seal itself. So Dark and Decrepit you can use as a base. You can do it over paint as a base. You can use it on raw wood as a stain. You can use it over the top of a finished product. You can use it as a glaze, or you could use it to age a piece in crevices and things. So probably one of my most favorite products and most used products in the DIY line, just because it's got so much versatility that I pull it out and I use it all the time. In fact, I went looking for it and had to open a new jar because it felt like I had just opened a jar, but I use a lot of it. So it uses up really fast. So I am going to be painting out this little basket in the in the Dark and Decrepit. I'm gonna paint out this in the Dark and Decrepit. And I'm going to paint out the taupe in the Dark and Decrepit. So I don't need to paint out this because it's already dark. And we're doing something different with our little bunnies, so we don't need them to be painted out in the Dark and Decrepit. So just because I don't need to keep you here with me while I'm doing this, because this is really all that I'm doing. So I'm gonna paint out those 3 items and get that base Dark and Decrepit on all 3 of them so that they're all ready to go when I get to how I'm gonna refinish them. All right, I've got Dark and Decrepit on everything that I needed it on. And I just thought, while I'm doing first coats on stuff, I'd like to get some color on my 3 little bunnies. So this little teeny tiny guy is going to get a coat of Pedal Pusher by DIY. Oh Lord, the lids. All right, if you're not as messy a painter as I am, and you actually clean off your lids, you wouldn't have this issue. This happens with any paint. It's just me. It's just the way that I am. Okay. So I'm gonna get a coat of Pedal Pusher, which is just this lovely blue color. And I'm kind of just starting to, quite honestly, you're going to see this in February. I know that it's a while till Easter, but you know, if I'm going to get stuff into the shop, and if I'm going to give you ideas on things that you can do to get things into your booths or your shops, or to start collecting items to be able to decorate up for the holidays, you know, it's got to be early. And really, I grab things as I see them. You know, if I'm thrifting or auctioning or, you know, estate sales or anything that I'm doing, you just go with what you find when you find it. That's the strategy. So lovely, lovely blue. The box is going to be yellow. So, you know, strategically, I'm going for something that's got a little bit of a contrast there. So he looks done. He doesn't look like he's going to need a touch up at all. We are going to be sealing with wax and doing a little bit of stuff with that. So we'll worry about him when it comes to that. All right, another jar. Okay, these two. Oh, well-used jar. I just need to work on upper body strength, I think, more than anything else. You know, as you get older, things go. All right, one of my faves. I'm gonna do these guys in Apothecary. I want them a little bit, you know, softer in tone. I don't mind the gray necessarily as a base, but I just want these guys to just soften out a little bit, fit in with possibly my Easter decor. You never know. You never know sometimes where things end up. I get some people going, I saw your video as soon as you posted it, and I looked in your shop for those. And I go, yeah, they're staying at home, sorry. Most things go into my shop, but occasionally some things stay at my house. My little rag rope basket is staying at my house until I decide whether or not I'm going to make some more and then see which ones I love best. We'll see. I'm, again, with these guys, they've got some texture to them, and our next step in them is going to play up that texture a little bit, right? And highlight some of the details. But I'm just using a chip brush again because I want it to get down into those crevices. I don't want to worry about the bristles on my good brushes getting wrecked doing this. And I know sometimes, you know, people would be quick to point that out to me, but I don't use my good brushes for this. I tend to reserve my good brushes for my furniture. When I'm refinishing my furniture, my good brushes are used then. Occasionally I'll still be using chip brushes depending upon some of the finishes that I do, but overall, that's when you'll see me pull them out. Now I'm just putting him off to the side while I do the top of this one, see if the paint dries a little bit before I go in to do the bottom. But these ones as well, they're just gonna need one coat before we move on to the next step. So I'm just gonna carry on with giving them that. They're gonna be so cute. I'm just looking at them, I love them already. All right, enough of my admiration of the Bunny Fest. Y'all just can wait for the next step. The second stage on some of our project pieces, you know, we've got our dark and decrepit on many of them, is to paint them white. So for these ones, I'm just looking for my paint key. I have beadboard by DIY, and I'm going to put a coat of white on them. So I have 3 items. One, I have this little shelf, and you'll notice I took the little brackets off of it just because they're a nice black already, and it saves me having to paint carefully or to touch them up later. So I'm just going to paint this over white because I'm going to be distressing it, and DIY is a thick paint, and I'm at the bottom of my can, so it's even a little bit thicker. Just looking to see which is my back. I'm probably going to get away with just one coat of white paint on this. It's going to have great coverage, and I'm going to be doing some distressing anyway. So the 3 items, just got a hair I'm working on getting off of there. There we go, a little bit of overhang. So I'm going to give this a coat of white. I'm going to give this a coat of white. Now, I used Dark and Decrepit on the outside because I am going to be distressing the outside. I didn't use Dark and Decrepit on the inside because I'm not going to be distressing the inside. I'm just going to paint it white also, however. And I'm going to paint this white. I didn't have to use any dark layer on because it's already dark. So I'm just going to be painting white on this. But this one I would expect, because it's a slick surface, that I'm going to do 2 coats. I'm going to do a quick light coating of the white on it. And you can see that it's going to be, you know, probably just a little bit streakier. Although, really love this paint. It's looking pretty good already. But it's a little bit streaky. So I'm going to do 2 coats on this, 1 coat on the other 2. And let's not forget that I need to do 1 coat on this. So it may need 1 and a touch-up coat, but I am going to get a smaller brush and I'm going to do 2 coats on this because it's a shiny surface as well. And that's it for the white painted coats. My bunnies in the blue and the green look awesome. My artichoke finial in the copper looks awesome. So they're all waiting for the next steps on those. So we'll get to that next. But just while I'm working on those, I would like the paint on this drawing. And if you watch me for any of my thrift flips, you know that I do all the like stages of all the projects all at once. So I kind of take a look at the projects and I group things together. So, you know, that way anything that needs to be painted white, I'm painting white all at the same time. So I've got the same brush going, I've got the white paint out, I'm not duplicating any of my efforts. And same thing when it comes to doing any of the finishes with waxes or anything like that. I want to do all of those at the same time. It's just kind of an economy of principle idea. You know, it's when you do this for a living, it's your time that matters the most, right? It's the time that is a limited commodity. So you want to take advantage of things, and doing all the same color, all at the same time, washing 1 brush instead of 3, all those sorts of things add up. And it just makes life a lot easier. And that's one of the reasons why on these thrift flips, you know, sometimes in some of my videos, you'll see things start to accumulate back there. And it's when I get a grouping of kind of interesting things to be able to do with you, or to be able to show you items and how I would just kind of zhuzh them up quickly to be able to sell in the shop. So it gives you an idea of what to do in your home with similar items. Then I'll do them all at once and I'll show you what I'm doing. But it's what I would do in the shop regardless, right? Whether I was filming or not, these are the steps that I would normally take to be able to add these into the shop period. So I'm taking you along on my workday journey, but these are the actions that I would need to take regardless. So some of the crafts are one-ofs. I'm just trying them out and seeing how I like them, or it's almost like an itch I have to scratch, right? I get this idea and I have to do it. But a lot of times they're just for you guys to learn some new things and maybe get you to try some things. Not because there's going to be a huge market for them in my shop. So sometimes, like, they're just a fun thing to do, and that I had a lot of fun doing them, and you know, I sell that particular project off in my shop, or I keep it myself. So some of them I just really love and I keep it myself, but they aren't something that they're not something that I'm going to really be selling in the shop, or they might have been a lot of fun to do, but they're too time consuming to make to sell in the shop. I would have to, you know, sell them for too much. Usually if I've just done one for a video, I don't worry about getting a fair price for my time, because my time was expensed because of the video. So I just sell it as, you know, just as a reasonable price for the materials and things. It'd be a different story if I was making more of them to sell in the shop. Then it's a case of, we hope that I got better at the craft and faster at the craft so that I could sell it for a better price. And some things just don't make sense to be able to do in bulk. I mean, you know, let me think, what would be a good example? The hedgehog video. So I made these cute little hedgehog figurines. I loved them. So yes, they're super cute, and yeah, give them a try, but they're not something that is going to be, I mean, they're cost effective. They really didn't cost me a lot to make, but they're a little bit more time consuming, a little bit more labor intensive, and probably are a little bit more, I mean, not everybody likes hedgehogs. So, you know, what's the hedgehog market? And they probably don't net me for my time enough of a profit for me to go out of my way to make tons and tons of hedgehogs for the shop, right? So they're a good example of something that was a one-of. I wanted to try it. I really had fun making them. I think that they were super cute, but I don't see them, so I see them as an item for you guys to make and have fun doing, you know, get your kids involved if you want to. So if you wanted to have a different kind of craft project, then that's a good thing. But, you know, and if you were making things for like a craft market or something like that, and you just are engaging in these crafts to have something fun to do while you're watching television, and you don't have, you know, you don't have the shop rent and all that sort of thing, where your time isn't as much at a premium and you're not having to price it the same way that I am, then they would be a cute item for that too. It's just a question of taking a look at, you know, what you're doing and what you have to make with money-wise for the time that you have, if that makes sense. So I'm just going to finish painting these guys up white, and then I'll come back at you for some of the other steps with some of the other items as I continue to get more paint on some of these and get them ready for our next steps. See you soon. Okay, and this is what I'm talking about. Just as I was wrapping up, finishing some of my items with the white paint, I realized I also have these candlesticks sitting off to the side that are waiting for a coat of white paint to be able to make a bit of a pairing. So I'm just going to go ahead and add this to my mix of items. So we're now up to 8, but again, it just makes the most sense. I've already got the white out, I've already got the paintbrush all dirty, and I might as well just paint these up too, because they're just going to be in similar finishes, and it just gets them done. The other thing that I am doing for you is I am keeping track of the amount of time that I've spent on all of these projects in total. So when I'm done, I'll be able to tell you for the now 8 items how much time it took me, and therefore kind of what, you know, you got to factor in your time when you own a shop even when you're doing a booth, you know, you've got to pay your rental costs. And every piece that you do has some of your time in it, and your time is taken up doing this and not doing something else, and there's a cost to that. So I like to keep track of how long it takes me, and I think that that's something that maybe would be of interest to you guys. It's hard for you to be able to tell on a video where I'm not literally doing every step right in front of you. Now, the only thing that I have left to paint is my little crate. I had done this in the Dark and Decrepit, and what I want is kind of a little bit of just kind of a pastel-y yellow. So what I do have here on this little piece of plastic wrap, if you can kind of, let me move some projects, is some DIY cake batter. And I'm gonna take some of my beadboard and kind of scoop it off beside it. And I am going to kind of blend these guys together to create just an even, softer, slightly more pastel kind of look. So we get that kind of creamy, yellowy, kind of almost like a really rich butter look. And I'm just going to use that to paint over my crate. And again, I'm going to be distressing this, so I don't envision that I'm going to need anything more than the one coat. Our next step, now that we've got our paint on, everything's painted. Everything's got at least a coat of paint on. It's now time for the pieces that need sanding to be sanded. So I have, this is a 320 grit sandpaper. And I just like to go over the painted surface lightly to be able to knock off any of the high surfaces, any of those little, just the microscopic picky parts of the paint to give it a nice smooth coat. You can then, because we use the DIY paint, we can either use sandpaper to be able to distress our edges, or we can use baby wipes. Or a wet cloth, doesn't have to be baby white. And this reactivates that clay paint so that we can just kind of rub off where we need to. And why I love this so much is that then I don't get nearly as dusty, and I'm not creating as many layers of dust. The workshop creates its own dust and dirt as it is. I don't have to do anything and there's a layer of dust. So rather than adding to it, I like to do this, and you can see how quickly I get that distress happening. So I have this piece, so this candle sconce, we have our two big candlesticks, we have our little shelf, we have our tote basket, we have our clock, and we have our little crate that I am going to be distressing in exactly the same way before we're ready for our next steps. Before we get ready to seal our pieces, a couple of little things just to zhuzh a couple of them up a little bit. So this tote, cute as it is, but it really needs a little something. So what I'm going to do is I have, well, I have it now. It's taken out of inventory. The Hello Spring, and you can kind of see the little picture here, right, of a bunny and some flowers. Hello Spring stencil from JRV. Now, it is too tall to fit the entire thing in there. So what I am gonna do is put the bunny and the flowers, they just fit across the side. And I'm gonna use weathered wood from DIY, which is like a darker charcoal, so I'm not going stark black. And I'm just taking some of the paint over into the lid and offloading it a little bit, okay? And I'm gonna stencil this onto both sides so that the stencil is good from either direction. And then I'll kind of stack the words Hello Spring. I mean, I know they're in one great big row, but I'm gonna stack them so that they fit on the sides. And I already checked, spring is the longest word, and it works, so then it all works. And then I could be talking a really good game, but the proof is really when I go to lift the stencil up. How well did I do? Okay. Oh, super cute. That's just a lot of fun. So I'm going to do that on the other side. And then I am going to layer my words. So this one's just a little trickier. But I'm going to layer my words. See if I get them straight. So I'm going to start with spring right down at the bottom, because then that's going to determine the height that I need to use for my hello. Noisy guys back again. Okay. So there's spring. And I'm gonna do exactly the same thing. I'm just gonna put the word hello centered above it. Do my bunny on the other side and hello spring on this. So that's good from all sides. So that's the plan for this one. You guys are with me on that. So I'm gonna come back to that. This one, I just have a little piece. It says Amore and a little bit of a floral from a really old pots transfer. So they've been updated and changed. And this is just a little segment out of one that I still have. So we're gonna, I don't know if my paint is dry enough for this, but we'll see. I have not sealed it. That would have guaranteed it would have transferred, but just decorating this one up. And I could have put it here, but then all the detail is down on the bottom as it is. So I wanted to balance it out just a little bit by putting just a subtle little transfer up top. So you see, like, you've got the screws, you've got the handle down here, you've got all of the weight. So putting it up at the top just kind of balanced it out. And that way, if I have a little pot of florals or greenery hanging down, then there's something a little bit decorative at the top. So that one done, just waiting some sealing. This one, so this is my little shelf, and I've got the brackets that are going in there. And what I'm looking at doing is just applying, I've got some little French words left over from a transfer. This one says Alsace, Picardy, Alsace, Corsica, Brittany. And I'm just going to center them on the bottom. Hard for you to see because the shelf is in the way. And I'm just gonna kind of center them between my two screw holes. So you recall we've got, somewhere over here, we've got these brackets that we're gonna be adding. So I didn't need anything really heavy down here. I just wanted to add something that was gonna add just a tiny little bit of interest. And these are place names in French. So, you know, always kind of adds a little bit. Oh, I'm just missing a little piece of my Y. There we go. So you can see how that's going to look. And I have one other one that I'll add in up above it here. So you see how that goes. So I'm just gonna carry on with that and jump back to my stenciling and then come back at you for all of the last finishing of all of our pieces. So we're gonna be doing a lot of waxing, but we're gonna be doing a lot of different we're going to be using some different colors of wax, so not just clear. So I'll come back when we start talking about the finishing, and we'll get these all done. So let's talk about finishing. Now, any of these plain white pieces, the shelving, the tote, the other candlestick, these big candlesticks, our clock face, right? They could all get finished with a clear poly if you want. I'm gonna finish them all with a clear wax. So I'm gonna use DIY, Debbie's Design Diary wax in clear. And I just usually take an old chip brush and wipe it on. And I'm going right over where we applied that transfer, and that wax is gonna seal that transfer on. So you're just going to take your wax, your clear wax, you're gonna kind of paint it on. You could use a clean, like white, lint-free rag if you want as well. And you're just going to cover all of your surface, and then take another clear lint-free rag, and you're just going to wipe it back, because you're going to get on more wax than your piece needs, right? I tend to be fairly liberal with it, just because I want a nice even coat. But then you just take a plain lint-free rag, and you're just going to wipe it back. So that's going to remove any of the excess that would maybe dry in a weird way, right? So you're just going to wipe it back and then let it sit overnight. So tomorrow, all I will do is take a different rag and I will buff it down. So I don't need any of these things to be really shiny, but I do want to buff it to make it a little bit smoother. So I'm going to do exactly that same process with all of these plain white pieces. I'm going to paint on, using my chip brush, the wax, wipe it back, set them off to the side to dry. I'm going to do the same thing for this little piece. So I want it to stay kind of this soft yellow color that we have. So I'm just going to cover this in clear as well. Everybody's with me? Good. When it comes to a couple of our other pieces, so our bunnies, we have 3 bunnies, 2 the large ones that we did in Apothecary, and 1 that we did in, what blue is this? I want to say Prom Queen. Petal Pusher. It was Petal Pusher, not Prom Queen. For this one, I have a different chip brush, and for this one, I'm opening a different wax. There's my key. So I'm using Debbie's Design Diary again in white. So I'm going to take this white wax, and I am going to dab it on, because we've got details on these bunnies, right? So I want this to go down and to sit into all of those crevices, right? So I'm going to kind of paint it down in, get it down into all those cracks. I mean, you could finish this in just clear if you wanted. If you really liked the look of just the Apothecary on its own, beautiful color, and you wanted to leave it at that, you could be done. Just do the clear and you're good to go. All right, let me show you what this looks like now. And if you didn't want to risk getting too much white on it, you could do the clear first and then do the white wax, which means that it's not going to soak up as much of the wax as doing it this way. But all I'm going to do is now I'm going to rub off the excess. And I'm going to have that white wax sit down in, because these are highly textured, it's going to sit down in all those low spots. And I'm going to get some of that detail happening, right? So it's going to highlight a little bit of that. Let me just wipe all of this guy back. can see that on the smooth sections, I can wipe back more easily. On the rougher sections, where it's got a lot of the fur, it's going to sit down in there a little bit more. And you get some of the areas that are tough to reach that you might get a little bit more, kind of like in the joints, maybe, if that makes sense. Okay, I've got a couple of little places, but you can see the difference that it makes, right? In terms of what it highlights and how it brings it out. So it kind of softens the color a little bit and highlights a little bit of the detail. Up to you. So I'm going to use that white wax on the other bunny and on this one and on the little blue guy too. Well, maybe, let me stop wiping this one and let me show you the little one, because you'll be able to see how much of a difference it makes even for like this darker blue color, right? And the impact of that white wax. And you can see, because I'm really wiggling that brush to try and get it down into all of those little grooves. This is why I'm just using, you know, chip brushes. So I tend to have a chip brush that's always got white wax in it, and one for dark, one for black, and you can just write on the handle too if you wanted to be able to distinguish between them, so that you don't inadvertently get different colored waxes happening when you don't want them to. And those wax chip brushes last a long time. But you can kind of see already, I mean, I've got some that I'll keep wiping off, but you can see already the difference that it makes to our little bunny, right? Just kind of softens him. It brings that a little bit more detail. Like, look, his little eye shows up so much better now. And it just adds a little something to him. Makes him stand out a little bit better. And again, I'll let these sit and then I'll buff them up tonight as well. So, I mean, buff them up tomorrow after they've dried a little bit, just to kind of smooth that wax out, buff it up a little bit. Now, oh, the other wax piece. This guy, I want to wax him too. So again, I've got a little chip brush, and this time I have Shipwrecked, which is a turquoise wax from DIY. And ooh, look at that color, look at that happening. So I definitely want to get this down into all of those little nooks and crannies. This is going to give it much more of a verdigris feel. And we may have one more step with it tomorrow when all that wax is dried, to kind of age it a little bit more. But oh my goodness, isn't that beauty? I have a small little side table in the front room that I painted it in black, in little black dress from DIY. And then I used this wax over it. So I waxed all of it, rubbed it all back. People swear I painted it in blue. They love the look of it, but not something that they ever would have considered. I mean, white wax over the black makes it look almost kind of weathered and barn boardy. This over the black, you can't necessarily tell that's what you did, but it definitely lends like a blue tone to it. It's just gorgeous. So there's a lot that the differences in waxes can make. And if you're looking at, gee, I would love to have a hot pink or a bright yellow wax, then you can take the DIY pigment powders and add them to either a white wax or a clear wax to be able to create a wax color of your own. These turquoise fingers. Okay, let me grab a different cloth, just because this cloth is going to get all very turquoisey, and we still have some white wax that I want to wipe off. I do not want to wipe my white pieces with this cloth. But I'm gonna go a little bit light on the top because I want that green to be sitting down in those crevices. And the same thing even on these sides. I want to dull down that copper a little bit and just leave whispers of that turquoise across the center, so you can see how much of a difference just that wax made on that, and dialing back the bright copper into kind of that dull, more aged kind of coppery tone. So I'm gonna let that sit and not play with it anymore because it's right exactly where I want it with the amount of turquoise. And I need that wax to set up before I move on to, I'm looking at it and I do have a next step, but I need it to set up. Put that off to the side so I don't use that by mistake. And I got one but I need to go. And so that little artichoke, I definitely have another step that I want to apply to that tomorrow, and I'll bring you in on that one. But I'm just gonna carry on. I'm gonna finish white waxing this piece and rubbing it back, and then I'm gonna do the rest of my white pieces and get them clear waxed and ready for me for tomorrow. Some of them will be done, some of them need a little bit more assembly, and we'll go from there. When it comes to buffing, you can take a buffing brush, you can just take a dried cloth, and really all that you're doing is just kind of going over your surfaces. You can see that it brings out a bit of a shine to a waxed finish, and really the depth of shine that you get, sorry, I just see a little hair here. The depth of the shine that you get is really dependent upon how much you buff. You know, if I'm doing a piece of furniture, then I'm probably not using a rag. Then I use car polishers and things. But again, I'm using rags and small brushes to get in some of the detail places, some of the crevices, those kinds of things. So what you need is really dependent upon kind of the piece you're working on and what it requires. Now this little shelf, I do still have to, I'm just looking to see if there's a right way or wrong way, and I'm kind of thinking, it's square, it doesn't matter. So I just need to return these brackets to where they started from on this little piece, and just screwing them back into the holes that existed. And then it's done. The other pieces are done because they've been waxed and buffed. And all that we need to do is screw this bracket back into place, both sides, and then this little guy is done. So let me move on, because you don't need to watch me screw this in more than once. So let me move on to the final touches of this guy. So I haven't buffed this up yet, and you'll see that when I do, I get some of that shine back. But what I want to do before I get it too shiny is I actually want to talk about adding just another little something to it. So again, you could stop here. And this is the look that you have if you stop here, right? So kind of nicely buffed up, a little bit shiny, not too bad. But what I want to do is I actually just want to add a tinge more aging to it. So I've got Dark and Decrepit by DIY, and I am putting a tiny bit on my brush, and then I'm taking almost all of it off. And what I want to do is just kind of hit some of those highs, some of those edges. So I'm just kind of hitting along the top and just adding a little bit more. Now this self-seals. So I'm not gonna have to worry about putting another sealer over this. This is in essence a top coat. It can have many uses, but I just like how it works for creating just a little bit more definition. I'm taking my brush on the side for these edges and my finger. One of the best tools. And it just gives a little bit more of a heightened edge look. From start to finish, if I didn't have dry time in between, let me think, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 items that we did. And that was with some stenciling and some transfers and with all the different waxing. That took me less than 2.5 hours for all 8 items. Probably closer to 2 hours, quite honestly. Which broken down 2 hours with 8 of them is maybe about 15 minutes per project. So from a cost perspective, that's not a bad way to start to look at things. So 15 minutes of your time for each of those projects is pricing, if you were looking to resell, which I am, what needs to be added into the price of that piece, along with materials and whatever your starting cost is, to be able to make your money. So the more cost effective you can be with your time, like doing all the painting all at once, doing the waxing all at once, doing all the buffing at once, is a more cost effective way to go in terms of the expenditure of your time, which provides a little bit of a cost savings to you. So I hope that some of these projects gave you a bit of an idea of, again, staging your time, staging the projects, but as well, just even some inspiration for 1 or 2 of these items, what you could do with them if you have similar items floating around your house, or if you happen to be out thrifting and see something. So taking an object like this that looked pretty raggedy when we started and turning it into something that's a much cooler decor piece, and with just a couple of quick little products, be able to turn it into something that looks brand new and totally usable. I'm looking forward to seeing you on the next video. Who knows what I'll get up to, but I hope that you join me on the journey. Until then, take care.